Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. When the Rebel Pathfinders carried out their mission on the forest moon of Endor, they were hopelessly optimistic about their chances of succeeding. With no more than a dozen or so poorly equipped guerrilla fighters, the Rebel Pathfinders had hoped to sneak past the Imperial blockade over the forest moon. They didn't. Darth Vader totally sensed them to the Force, and then the Rebels were somehow supposed to overwhelm a legion of the finest stormtroopers in the galaxy. They basically had zero success in succeeding in their mission. But luckily, Chewbacca can't control his love for food and triggers a trap leading the Rebel team straight to a band of Ewoks living in a nearby village. These tiny warriors would prove to be pivotal in the coming battle against the Empire, and perhaps most shockingly, they performed extremely well against the modern Imperial Legion. Not only were they able to engage the Imperials with bow and arrow, they even managed to ambush several squads and beat them down with their furry fists and rocks and spears. But perhaps the most impressive part about the Ewok offensive was the fact that they took out multiple Imperial scout walkers with primitive yet ingenious traps. Now, we're told that the Ewoks were courageous and very strong, and they had, great muscular builds, but at the same time were tender and delicious, especially if you marinated them properly and rubbed in a little bit of olive oil with salt and pepper. But the reality was the Ewoks were no stranger to the Imperials and had fought countless skirmishes against these foreign intruders prior to this battle. The series of small battles were a part of what would be known as the Imperial Ewok War, a side conflict in the larger galactic civil war. Today we'll be looking at the origins of this conflict and how it eventually led to the Battle of Endor. Now, before we begin today, a word from our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends is the premier mobile turn-based RPG game. This game is all about collecting new champions, training them up, and creating a perfect team of warriors that you can send on campaign missions, dangerous raids and dungeons, guild events, and of course PvP arena battles. Not only are there an endless combination of warriors to choose from, there are also millions of artifacts for you to collect. It's all about creating a satisfying gameplay loop. One of the best ways to get a new champion is by using shards at the hero portal. You never know what you're going to get. It could be a degenerate muckstalker. I'm not going to let a lizard man walk around giving my people salmonella, so I'll sacrifice him at the tavern for more XP points. This Grumbler, on the other hand, is not bad. He's basically just a short human, and better yet, he has great tanking abilities and an HP buff. Sure, he's not a 4-star prospect, but he can ride the bench for now. And now, just recently, they opened up a new bazaar that has even more high-end equipment that you can pay for by using golden bars you can win in the new PvP Tag Arena. Better yet, you can also collect champion fragments now that will summon very powerful and special warriors that you can use for your squad. If this sounds like something you might be interested in, take a look at the link in our description down below. You can download the game for free, and if you are a new player, you also get 50,000 silver, 50 gems, 1 energy refill, 1 clan boss key, 5 mystery shards, 1 day XP booster, and 1 free champion, the Hex Weaver. This offer will be available for the next 30 days. All of this will be waiting for you here. Alright, thank you for your patience. Now, on to the rest of the video. The Ewoks might look cute and cuddly, but they actually live on an extremely dangerous planet full of all sorts of apex predators. There's a reason why these tiny bear aliens mostly live in tree villages far away from the forest floor. Amongst the most terrifying predators on Endor were the Goraks. These were massive humanoid-looking beings that could grow from anywhere from 6 to 30 meters. These giant troll-looking aliens were relatively dumb even compared to the primitive Ewoks, but their terrifying size and strength made tools and weapons unnecessary when they were looking for food. The Goraks would occasionally wear clothing and have some simple weapons. They were also known for domesticating boar wolves. These were just another monstrous animal that inhabited the planet. They're around 3 meters tall, making them roughly the size of a full-grown African elephant. Now, luckily, the Goraks was extremely sensitive to light, which is why it only came out of its hiding place at nighttime when it hunted. Occasionally, it would run into Ewok villages, and the results were usually pretty bad. Bright Tree Village, which was located near the Death Star 2 shield generator, had dealt with Goraxes on numerous occasions. The Ewoks would actually rig large siege weapons and primitive traps in an attempt to take these gigantic troll monsters down. These were the same traps that the Ewoks would use against the much smaller Imperial Scout walkers. it's probably a lot more difficult to take down a Gorax than a walker. You also had species like the Dulocs, who were distant relatives to the Ewoks and very likely related to the Grinch. They were taller and lankier than the Ewoks, but shorter than adult humans, but similar in stature. The Dulocs also hunted the Ewoks and often engaged the Ewoks in combat. While fighting creatures like the Dulocs, the Ewoks developed their ability to fight against larger humanoids, like the stormtroopers they would eventually encounter. Then you had smaller dangerous animals like the Wisties. These were extremely tiny fairy-like creatures that could shoot fire out of them. The ferocious creatures protected the forest, ironically, with their fire, and the Ewoks would often capture them and throw them at people as projectiles. Those little degenerates. Now you're probably seeing the pattern here. The Ewoks had to basically fight for their survival on a daily basis, and through the process of learning how to survive, they have also become very dangerous and weaponized everything around them. And in the process of figuring out how to defend themselves against much larger foes, they inadvertently also picked up a bunch of guerrilla war fighting techniques that they would use successfully against the Empire. Now, after the embarrassing loss of the Death Star, Emperor Palpatine, against the advice of many of his advisors, decided to start construction on a second battle station. Like the first project, it needed to be created in complete secrecy, away from the prying eyes and ears of the rebels. The Empire sends out thousands of survey teams across the galaxy to find a suitable system for this construction effort. Survey Team IX-3244B, under the command of Captain Toss, is assigned to the Endor system. The Endor system was located in an extremely remote part of the galaxy, and the system itself had a bountiful amount of natural resources, which would limit the amount of transportation of materials to that construction site, decreasing the likelihood that the project would be discovered. The Imperial Survey first contacted Lord Vader before going on their first mission and told him about their preliminary scans of the planet. Things looked promising. But second-in-command planetologist Lieutenant Kvyat recommended that a barren rock with very low gravity and poisonous atmosphere would be a better site for a shield generator. The Imperial team had also detected many life signs down on the planet's surface, and the LT was worried that these indigenous life forms would make construction very difficult on this planet. Also, a barren planet would offer no cover or place to hide for a rebel infiltration team. Had Vader listened to the LT, maybe things would have turned out differently during the Battle of Endor, and probably changed the course of galactic history. When Imperial Expedition IX-3244B finally reached the surface of the planet, the Ewoks immediately spotted them and kind of followed them in the shadows of the forest around them. The team was only made up of 6 Imperials, and their goal was to make contact with the Ewoks, but they soon got lost in the forest. After 2 hours of aimlessly hiking around in the woods and getting lost, the stormtroopers find themselves surrounded by a large group of Ewoks who are hiding in the shadows again, but now they're playing drums. The stormtroopers start to panic and begin randomly firing into the forest and retreat and somehow find the shuttle and leave the planet. Unsatisfied with this first expedition, Palpatine sends another Imperial team to gather more information about the local inhabitants on the planet. This team reported finding several dangerous local fauna, including the Gorax we mentioned before, along with condor dragons, and a tribe of shipwrecked space pirates. The team also met with the bear aliens known as the Ewoks and saw them as primitive and not much of a threat against the Empire. Now, a third platoon of stormtroopers would be dispatched to Endor, and although there had already been contact between the Imperial troops and Ewoks, this time the stormtroopers were tasked with observing first contact protocol with the Ewoks, since they were the most advanced species on the planet. The Galactic Republic formerly had the Unknown Aliens Protocol, which was designed to create peaceful first encounter situations. Obviously, Emperor Palpatine didn't really like that whole idea, and he would eventually evolve it into whatever the Imperial First Contact Protocol is. It's probably not designed to protect aliens at all. The third platoon first encounters a small group of Ewoks. One of them is carrying a bushel of freshly cut flowers. That particular Ewok decides to place a flower in the barrel of one of the stormtroopers, which really freaks them out. The stormtrooper interprets this action as an attempt to disable his weapon, and so he begins opening fire on the Ewoks. Which, of course, is a terrible move, especially because they didn't really hit any of the Ewoks, and a bunch of Ewok hunters return and start tracking them for the next few days. Now, if you watch our guide to hunting Ewoks, you'll know that Ewoks are nocturnal hunters and become increasingly dangerous when the sun goes down. And so when nighttime comes a few days later, the Ewoks lynch one of the troopers called Kovac with a rope and drag him off into the bush. A few days later, the Stormtrooper squad found Kovac's remains. He had been eaten alive. The 3rd Platoon would finally set up a permanent structure in preparation for the shield generator installation. At night, the Ewoks would come to their bunker and bang their drums all night to keep them awake. Although the Ewoks never directly attacked the bunker, any Stormtrooper caught walking out at night by themselves were usually never seen again. Eventually, the Empire chose to build their shield generator bunker in a location that was occupied by a tribe of Dulux, those Grinch-looking Ewok things we talked about before. One Dulux by the name of Agluk managed to escape the attack and reached Ewok Bright Tree Village. This is the same village where Han Solo and his friends were taken to after their own capture. A group of Ewoks journey to the Dulux village in order to confirm what Agluk said is true. They find all of the Dulux now imprisoned and being prepped for execution. The Ewoks jump into action and start attacking the Stormtroopers while freeing the Dulux from their bindings. At the same time, a massive beast known as the Griag bursts from the ground and interrupts the skirmish and starts devouring fighters on both sides. Eventually, an Ewok shaman manages to destroy the Griag with a magical artifact known as the Sunstar, and the Imperial forces are routed. Despite the appearance of an Imperial base so close to their own tree village, the Ewok decide not to launch any further offensives against the Empire. Instead, they would choose to carefully observe the Imperials and learn as much about them as they could. 8 months later, when the Rebel Alliance Pathfinders land on the Forest Moon, the Ewoks are already experts in killing Imperials. So there you have it, guys. I hope that gives you a little bit more context about why the Ewoks are so effective in battle. It's partly because of how they have adapted around much more deadlier creatures than any Stormtrooper squad could be, but it's also because they had experience fighting these guys for, at least a year. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.